welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
Good morning. Everybody having a good time? This is an awesome meeting. This is my second year, 2 years in a row here, and I was talking to Sharon the other night. We're going to start trying to make it every year, which I think would be really awesome. Originally, I'm from Great Falls, but I reside in Nebraska now. Once they get you to Nebraska, they keep you so damn poor that you can't come back. But my name is Ed, and I am an addict. I don't even know where to start, to be honest with you. I suffer a lot from CRS. Can't remember shit. But like a lot of people, I came from a broken home. When my mother and dad got divorced, that was probably one of the earliest things I can remember. You know, I remember the things like he beat her, he wouldn't come home, he was always loaded, we were always broke, and them kind of things. And I can remember, you know, him inviting all of his drunk Air Force buddies over to the house on holidays like Christmas, and them wrecking my toys. You know, I had a train set that was really cool that I got, and I had this wind-up tank, and they'd run the tank across in front of the train and wreck it, and they'd laugh, and, you know, and God damn, I hated that guy. And you know, and then I'd watch him abuse my mother, and I didn't like that. And anyway, he was a no good son of a bitch. And for everything I hated him for, I became. I went on to I just had a brain fart. But anyway, my mother then remarried, and that really pissed me off because, you know, I had my mom right here, and I mean, she would give me whatever I wanted. She'd do whatever I needed her to do, you know, to benefit myself, and that was great. And then this guy came into my life, and they got married, and the first thing he said was, "That shit's going to cease." And I went, "Whoa, and who do you think you are?" Well, he showed me who he was. I didn't like him either. Really pissed me off. He was cutting in my gravy train. But as time went on and years went by, but it wasn't until after I cleaned up that I really grew to love the man. Back in them days, you didn't get divorced. You know, and for him to step up and take on a woman with 2 children was almost unheard of. Anyway, I thought I'd find my fame and fortune. I enlisted in the Army in 1963 after high school. Oh, that was real cool. I decided I was going to quit high school. And my mom said, "So you're going to quit?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, you got to go get your books and stuff." And she said, "So tomorrow we will get on the bus. Then we will go and sit through each one of your classes. and we will show your classmates what a loser you really are. And I knew that my mother would do them things. And I said, man, that ain't going to happen. But that's the first time I had heard of a we program. So I did graduate from high school, and I went on and enlisted in the Army. And, I don't know, I've been in about a year and a half, and I was all screwed up one night, and I called my mom, and I says, you need to meet me at the airport. She said, why? And I said, I'm coming home. She said, you don't have any leave time. I said, yeah, I know, I'm quitting. She says, really? And I said, yeah. She says, okay, what time do you get in? And I said, well, if I catch this flight, I'll be in at such and such a time. And she says, we will pick you up. I says, who's we? She says, me and the two biggest military policemen I can find. I get your point. Well, I got out of the service in 1966, and by then I was already into my full-blown disease. It took me like 3 days to get home. I missed so damn many flights, man, out of San Francisco. Then I got to Seattle, and I missed 2 or 3 flights out of Seattle. My parents were tired of going to the airport. I finally called them, and they says, call us when you get into Great Falls. We're not going to be up there until you call us. Okay. But anyway, so, and as all addicts, we know what happened then. The disease progressed. The using got more and more frequent. No job, couldn't hold a job. My parents got tired of me freeloading. And the whole gambit. And God bless them, I'm glad they were alive when I cleaned up. As I did the geographical thing, things will change if I go here. But I took myself with me and screwed everything up there, too. In 1971, I ended up in a place called Larned, Kansas. It was a state hospital. I was living in some other town in Kansas. I can't even remember the name now, but there was about 5 of us living together. And it was a weekend, and they gave me the rent money, the phone money, all the utility money, and they went back to where they were from for the weekend. And I had one hell of a party. And then they came back. Boy, were they pissed. And I said, well, when I was downtown, I said I knew I was going to get loaded, so I gave all of the money to this bartender to put in the safe so I wouldn't spend it or get robbed. And they said, cool, what time does he get there? I said, it's 10. They said, we'll go down and get the money at 10. There wasn't no money there. So about 4 o'clock in the morning, everybody's sleeping. I get up. It's winter, man. It's cold. And I walk down to this all-night diner, and I call the cops. I said, you got to come and arrest me. They said, what? And I said, you got to come and arrest me. And this cop shows up. He says, so why are we arresting you? And I said, well, I want to do my civic duty. I wrote a bunch of hot checks in your town, and I'm turning myself in. He said, wow. He said, well, would you like to go see the judge? And I said, yeah. So I told the same thing to the judge. And the judge says, would you like to go to Larned State Hospital? And I said, how far away is it? He says, 22 miles. And I said, I don't have a car. He said, we'll transport you. I said, okay. Because I knew they weren't smart enough to commit themselves to a mental institution to get me. I escaped from that mental institution. I have nothing that says I'm A-okay. So if I seem a little strange, you know why. I moved to a place called Hutchinson, Kansas, and of course the progression of the disease was just continued, and I checked into a high-rise and was living there for about 4 or 5 days, and came back one night, and they moved it. It was a boxcar sitting on the side track somewhere. It was gone. So then I checked into a motel under the bridge, and so it's my story's like a lot of you guys, and there's no sense in getting all wrapped up into that. In 1971, November 25th, I used for the last time. Back then, in the Midwest, there was nothing known as Narcotics Anonymous. We didn't have it. So we went to the other fellowship. I'm very grateful for that fellowship. When I went there, I quit everything. My first night there, I'm here sitting there. My first meeting there was kind of strange. I had long hair and a beard, if you can imagine that. And I walked in there and to a meeting, and there was one seat open, and it was next to some old boy in bib overalls and cowboy boots, and he even had the shit on his boots. And I said, oh man, I don't know about this. And so I went over and I sat down, and of course I was shaken. And he says, well, my name's Carl. He said, could I get you a cup of coffee? And I said, well, he said, well, maybe I should get you a half a cup of coffee. Boy, he pissed me off. So he got me a half a cup of coffee, and he sat there, and he said, yeah, my name's Carl. He said, I want to tell you something. If you ever need me anytime, day or night, call me and I will come. And then he put his hand on my leg. I was not a touchy-feely kind of guy. And I thought, boy, this ain't going to happen. But he worked 60 miles from Hutchinson, Kansas. And there came later on a time that I needed him, and I called him, and guess what? He drove them 60 miles. And he became my first sponsor. Now, I want to tell you something about some of these old farts, In the other fellowship's book, in stories about people and stuff, there's one chapter in there that this guy talks about how he kept using and everything, and he couldn't stop, and so they took him out in the country, and they tied him to a tree, and they left him all night. I knew Carl had to be one of them guys. So I learned right on that I did what he told me to do, and if I didn't, I damn sure didn't let him know I wasn't doing it. So, and he had co-conspirators. Like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 days, he got a hold of me and he said, what are you doing tonight? And I said, I don't know. He said, you're going to a meeting? I said, are you? He said, no, I got something to do. And I said, yeah, me too. Well, I'd already figured out what I was going to do. You guys know what I was going to do. Because if I didn't do it, I was going to die. You know, I mean, we're talking already 3 or 4 days with nothing in my system, and I knew I was going to die. So I was going to fix that. And he said, well, I'll come over and get you, and we'll go for a cup of coffee. And I said, good. And he come over and picked me up, and we went over to a guy's house named Ray. There's about 3 foot of snow on the ground. And I asked Ray if I could use his bathroom. I come back out, and Carl was gone. And I said, well, hey, Ray, how about giving me a ride home? Because I lived about 5 miles away. He says, I can't. I ain't got a car. Okay. I said, is Carl coming back? Well, I don't know. Well, I said, how do I get home? He said, well, we could go to the meeting. We'd probably find your ride home after the meeting. And I thought, okay, smart ass. I said, if you don't have a car, how are we going to get to the meeting? It's only a block and a half from here. I think we can walk. Okay. Well, I didn't use that night. And, you know, there was many, many instances like that. Ray, one time after he did get a car, I was having a bad time, and he said, well, maybe we should go see Carl. And I said, okay. And Carl was working that day out plowing the fields, and so we drove the 60 miles. And Carl come around on the tractor, and he said, well, get up there with him. And I said, okay. And I got up there with him, and I'm talking to Carl, and we come around again, and Ray's gone. 12 hours on a tractor with your sponsor. I mean, he had a captive audience. God bless him. He's been dead for quite a few years. But you know, when I came in, I mean, he had the longest time of anybody in the room, and he had 6 years. And I thought, you know, that really has to be a lie. You know, because you know how confused we get? I wanted to quit, but I was afraid. I wanted to die, but I was afraid. I didn't know how to do anything. And back in them days, you could not talk about drugs in the meetings. You were chastised. You were set to time out. You know, you got to go sit in the corner. We don't know what to do with people like you. So, you know, I had to learn, you know, what I couldn't say. And but Carl, one-on-one, he didn't give a shit. You know, for Carl, back in 1971, still recovery was recovery, and he didn't give a shit how you get it or what your problem was. It just, if you wanted to do something about it, he could help. That's what he wanted to do. And even though they said change playgrounds, playmates, and playthings, if you wanted to get a hold of Carl, you had to go to the brass rail if he was in town. Because he went there, drank coffee, smoked cigarettes, and played dominoes. And he said, now I know you're not supposed to do this, and I don't want you to do it. He said, but I do it. But you're not supposed to do things that I do. He always had me confused. But you know, as time went on and our relationship grew and I started understanding more, I had 30 days, and they said, we need somebody to chair the meeting next week. And I put my hand up, and he said, put your hand down. I said, well, and he said, no, there's no, well, I will tell you when you can do that. He says, Ed, everybody knows how to stay fucked up. And that's all you know. You don't know how to stay clean yet. But I will tell you. And I thought, oh boy. God, I didn't like that guy. And as time went on, you know, I used to be one that I always tried to manage things myself. Can anybody identify with that? Does anybody, even after a few years, slip back into that? I do. After 30 years, I slip into it. Even 40 years. But that's a different story. But anyway, so I, in my life was going to shit. And I mean, you heard the term white knuckling it and all that stuff. And I was doing it. And all the shit that was supposed to happen, that was supposed to be good, was not happening. And I was pissed off a lot of the time. So I finally went to Carl and he said, "How long have you been trying to do this on your own?" I said, "Oh, I don't know, about 6 weeks." He said, "Good." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, you got things so screwed up now that Christ himself can't help you." And I went. He said, "Ed," he says, "how bad do you want it?" And I said, "More than anything else in the world." He said, "We're going to find out." He said, "You have to do everything I tell you to do. And if you do, you will stay." You'll have to excuse me. This is your fault. And I did. At that moment, I turned my will and my life over to the care of Carl Mitzner. My sponsor today says, some days you gotta fake it till you make it. Carl was my higher power for a while. And he told me, we talked about the higher power, and I really want to get into that because the God of my understanding has been so good to me. But I remember, a lot of things. I could sit here for hours and hours and hours. When I came into the program, I didn't have a God, because growing up I had a God, but it was a punishing God. And so, in the faith that I grew up in, I was already excommunicated from the church because of all the shit that I had done. So I couldn't turn to that God, because I related God with church and oh man, it's a mess. I can't even go there today because it's still all jumbled up. But what I have today is a lot better than what I had back then. So, but anyway, Carl said, "Well, you can't have it." He said, "There's a couple of reasons you can't have it." When I came in, he says, "My higher power was a step ladder." And I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "And on top of the step ladder was the thermostat, because nobody hooked the thermostat to the wall." And he said, "That's a pretty good job. Holds up the thermostat. The thermostat controls the heat and the air conditioning, and, that's quite cool." And he said, "I finally had to get a different higher power, because I came in one day and somebody had taken the initiative to hook the thermostat to the wall, and they took my higher power away." And I said, "Wow." But, I thought that this God had deserted me a long, long time ago, and I was going to go to hell in a handbasket. And but as I look back today, the higher power has always been there. And there was a lot of divine intervention. It was divine intervention that got me into the program of Narcotics Anonymous. It was when I was in the service, there was a couple of instances It was divine intervention. And since I've been clean, there have been a few incidents, divine intervention. And I'll share some of that with you if you don't mind. I had about 1 year, and I'd been to a couple of functions. And I remember Carl saying, you going to go to the function next weekend? I said, nope. So why not? I said, because they're all stuck-up assholes. He said, what do you mean? I said, none of them people come up and said hello to me. He said, did you hold out your hand? I said, well, no. He said, that's why. He said, you're a stuck-up son. He said, if you would have held out your hand, there would have been 20 people trying to grab it. So that's one of the things that I learned. I go somewhere and I think they're stuck up, better get that hand out there. Tell them move the arm. But of course, I was having trouble with the higher power. I can't even remember what the issue was, but we were having issues. And I didn't think he was listening to me. I mean, I was probably in between jobs and I didn't make enough money and the rent was due. And I mean, just all that stuff when you're really not working a good program, all the stuff that happens. And I went to this function that Carl said I should go to. And there was a guy there, and he was a Baptist minister of all things. And he says, he said, I want to share something with you. And he says, there was this guy named Jim, and he was a wino guy. And he used to always come in church and go up to the altar and say, hello, God, my name is Jim, and he'd turn around and leave. And he said he did this clockwork every day for about 3 or 4 months. And he said, but then one day I didn't see him. He was making his rounds in the hospital. And he come up on this room, and there was Jim. And he went in, and Jim says, he says, I want to tell you something. He says, I have a problem with drinking and drugging. And he says, and I used to come into a church every day, and I didn't know how to pray, and I didn't even know if he would listen to me if I did. He said, but I just have to share something with you. He said, they brought me in here a couple of days ago, and I know I am dying. And I found myself saying, hello, God, my name is Jim. Last night, there was a light at the foot of my bed. A voice come out of the light said, hello, Jim. My name is God. That's where I was. I didn't really know how to pray. I wasn't going to use the all set kind of things that we all learn as children, because that was the God that deserted me and kicked me out of church and everything else. So that wasn't going to work. Because what I learned from that is that I can talk to him like I talk to you. I can talk to him like my best friend. And what I learned a little while later, and guys, believe this, it was from a woman. I did learn something from a woman. A very wise woman. It was the one who used to always use the term we. She said, Eddie, she says, God hears your prayers all the time. It's just... sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's no, and sometimes it's not right now. Somebody always hears it. And you don't have to use the set prayers that you grew up with. So that was a relief. So as time went on, I mean, there was always a couple other instances, and I have to back up a little bit because I run into a guy named Jim Ann, who currently lives in Missouri. He's my sponsor now. And he lived in Salina, Kansas, and I was dating this gal in Salina, and so that's how we kind of met. And Jim, of course, was in the program, and he got into some trouble in Salina, something about a gun and a married woman, and and he was in recovery, and he said, well, Ed, how's the work in Hutch? And I said, pretty good. He said, I don't have a place to live. I said, yeah, you do. So he moved to Hutch, and we batched together for a couple of years. I feel real blessed because Jim Ann was responsible for bringing Narcotics Anonymous to the Midwest. So, and Jim gives me a lot of undeserved credit, but I watched him do the footwork and everything it took to get Narcotics Anonymous in Nebraska. Anyway, we tried in Kansas, and nobody wanted to get clean. Nobody. 2 or 3 meetings, dead. 2 or 3 meetings, dead. Watched a lot of people die. A lot of us died. Then when he moved back home to Iowa. I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. I found a couple of people there who were interested in NA. We drove to Iowa because Jim had a white book. And said, man, I got some people that are interested. We need to try and get something started, Jim. And he says, how's the work in Lincoln, Nebraska? I said, pretty good. He said, well, I don't have a place to stay. I said, yeah, you do. So he moved to Lincoln. I am truly blessed. First meetings of Narcotics Anonymous were in Jim Ann's garage. There were 4 of us. And let me tell you, this journey has been so wonderful. So wonderful. And it grew, little at a time, and somebody would go back out, somebody would die. But we learned that so many of us have to die so the rest of us can get clean. And I was the only one with a motorcycle. There was some talk going around at the treatment center that you could not ride a motorcycle and stay clean. You had to give up your motorcycle. Damn. I applied for a job as a counselor at that treatment facility, and they wouldn't even interview me. But when they had somebody there who was a junkie and they didn't know what to do with them, they called Jim and I. When they had somebody there who had just gotten out of prison and they couldn't manipulate him, or that isn't a good word, but they couldn't get him to come around to their way of thinking, and they couldn't control him, they called Jim and I. They didn't know how to deal with people like us. And then, lo and behold, they were able to. They started getting money to deal with us. Oh, my. But yeah, you used to have to go to the psych ward if you were a junkie. But, yeah, those were the first meetings. And we even had a couple of women show up, and that was good. And then one of them caught 5 years at the penitentiary in York, Nebraska. And she got it okayed for me and Jim to bring meetings into the women's penitentiary in York, Nebraska. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. there on our bikes. Jim had got a bike then, and I love you. Take me home. Oh yeah. God, we were doing H&I before it was H&I. I love H&I, and even back in Kansas, you know, you heard of you get up and go to the bathroom and you get drafted, you know, into something. Well, my sponsor says, come on, we're going to the penitentiary. And I said, okay. And I don't know, maybe I had 2 months or 3 months, something like that. And of course, at that time, he was called the inside-outside sponsor for the Kansas State Penitentiary in Hutchinson, Kansas. We go in there and we're sitting there, and he said, he didn't even let me go to the bathroom. He said, this is Ed, he's the new inside-outside sponsor. He didn't ask me, he didn't let me go to the bathroom or nothing. And so that was really my first introduction to H&I. And it was very rewarding. And we got it to where we could have 3 meetings going in a week. And I got Jim involved in that roundabout way because Jim was doing a radio show. We even had radio shows back then in Salina, Kansas. And he didn't tell me, and he pulled me in there one day, and he said, we're going to go to this kind of meeting over at this radio station. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And he said, well, sit here and wait for the other people. And I said, what about these mics and stuff? He said, don't worry, they're not on. Then all of a sudden we're getting calls. And Jim says, well, I've got a friend Ed here. He can probably answer that question. And the mics then are on and all that stuff. So you people have a strange way of getting people to do things that they don't normally want to do. And so I got him involved in H&I in Hutch to get back at him. But anyway, there we are in Lincoln, Nebraska, and things are going good. And I'd always kind of had a dream. We used to go to a meeting called the Young People's Meeting, and I thought, boy, wouldn't it be cool if we had maybe 20 motorcycles sitting out there someday? Because I ride motorcycles still today. And Jim says, yeah, that'd be cool. And then a couple of people, treatment center, hey, Ed, we got a guy up here who rides a motorcycle, and he thinks, somebody told him that he's got to sell his bike and he's wanting to leave treatment. Would you come and talk to him? Yeah. No, man, you don't have to sell your motorcycle. That's bullshit. And, well, that's what they're telling me. Well, it's bullshit, man, believe me. Well, anyway, then he got involved, and the first thing you know, there was 5 of us riding motorcycles. A year later, there was 20 of us riding motorcycles. These were all people that treatment center didn't want nothing to do with because they wouldn't get rid of their motorcycles. Some of them are still involved in Narcotics Anonymous today. And some are dead because they went back out. Well, one day, Kent, who was the 3rd member of our deal in Lincoln, Nebraska, he lived in Fremont, and I was riding home with him one day, and I rode halfway and said, see you later, and I'm coming back, and my motorcycle at that time was over 11 foot long. I mean, it was kind of like this. And you couldn't see over the tank. You just went. And it was nice out. I got it up to about 90, let it back off, the pipes just blaring. You know the music. Or some of you know the music. Got it up there again, and my handlebars came off. I went, oh my. You know that's what I said, right? Well, the road was straight. And I thought, what am I going to do? Everything's going okay. I just can't steer. I don't even want to lean. Well, we'll see what happens. And I got down to about 45, and people are going by on the other side. You know, these handlebars are laying in my lap. They're probably going, what in the hell is that? I thought I could jump. Oh man, this would not be good. But the bike is still running straight. Everything's going okay. Just can't steer. So I got down to about 15. I said, if I'm going to unload this thing, I could do it now. But I'm still going to get hurt. Everything's going okay. The road is straight. Come up like this, and I took the handlebars and I got them back onto the springer and got to the side of the road. And boy, was I grateful. Now, if you were looking for me that day, you could have found me. Because there was a streak of shit laying out there for 5 miles. So, I got it back into town. Of course, I go over to Jim's to the garage, and they're having a meeting. Yeah. Having a meeting. Cool. What's it on? We're talking about the higher power. You know anything about that? I said, yeah, he rides. So now you can understand why the God of my understanding, you know how some bikers talk, that he listens. He does. And you know what I have found in the last few years? That more of the things are yes than maybe or no. And the way I found that out is for some unknown reason, I am trying to do the next right thing. You know, this program comes slow for some people. I am one of them people. Case in point, when I go to meetings back home, nobody's been around as long as me, so they think that I should know a lot of stuff. And so I'm in a meeting, and I can't even remember what it was, and it had something to do with spiritual awareness and things of that sort. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, the sky opens up, and I have this wonderful revelation. And I shared it with people there who don't have near as much clean time as I do. So I am sharing this beautiful whatever it was. And they said, oh, hell, Ed, we've known that for years. It comes slow for me. They've known it for years. Why didn't you tell me? Didn't ask. So I've been really, really blessed by this program. You know, a lot of us lose families and everything, you know, due to our active addiction, the part to where we are using drugs. And because I believe, like our speaker last night, that you take away the drugs, you can still be in active addiction. And you can be full-blown in a fucking heartbeat, let me tell you. But anyway, I've been really fortunate. I never lost a wife while I was using. I never lost children. I had to clean up before I could get married. And just because you're in the program and you're trying to work a program does not mean that you're not going to lose that wife. And I know because I've lost it 4 times. But I've learned something from each one. 18 months was the cutoff date. If I couldn't park my motorcycle in the living room and or kitchen, you had to go. That's just the way it was. And what do you mean you're more important than my bike, my dog, and my gun? For the first 15 years in the program, my nickname was Angry Man. That's why I said when I have these other emotions that you might see, that's you guys' fault. The only thing I knew when I came into the program was to be as fucking mad as I could be. Because it did one thing. And out on the street, the one thing that'll help you survive is if you keep people away from you. And anger is one of the best ways to do that. And I did it very well. Except, no one told me that I didn't have to do that when I came in here. In fact, it was Jim Ann, after I had, 10 or 15 years, told me I didn't have to carry a gun anymore. So today I don't carry a gun. That's kind of nice. I got a gun, but I don't carry it anymore. But, so it does come slow for me. It really does. I was talking to a couple of people earlier, and one of the biggest blessings that I have received in Narcotics Anonymous is my son just celebrated 18 months. But he was raised around this program. He was raised around it. He used to come to meetings with me just for something to do. And one night we were at a candlelight meeting, and we went outside after the meeting, and this guy come up to him and said, "So, how long do you got?" And my son looked at him and said, 6 days. And I've kept track. Because Eddie don't say anything. Very rarely does he even speak at meetings at all. And he said, "Well, I just ain't got nothing to say." I said, "You'd be surprised, but you do it on your own, And when I go, to a convention up here, guys would tell me, "Well, Eddie showed up at 2 meetings last week, on his own, by himself." And so I am so blessed. But I thank you people. But he remembers a lot of the people from, we used to go to this Run for Fun. It's been going 32 years. It was started by bikers. Anyway, the people in Alexandria, Nebraska, the first year we were there, they had the cops out there. Highway patrol and everything, because there was 6 motorcycles that rolled into this campsite, and they just knew it was going to be the Hells Angels and a big drug deal going on and everything else. And wow, now they like us to come. They make more money there, and and no one can believe it. A couple of years ago, we had 1,000 people there. 1,000 people. I think there was something like 300 motorcycles. We even got Sharon to come a couple of years, all the way from California. She had a wonderful time. But anyhow, so I could go on and on and on about the many blessings that I have received. And my God is good to me. He is very good to me. Have you ever made amends to somebody and you go on and you always think, they say they forgive me, but did they really? Have you ever thought of that? What if they really didn't? What if they just say they did? Well, I had a chance to find out. A year ago, or 2 years ago, can't remember, CRS. Yeah. Anyway, I had some issues going on, and as some of you know, I have what is now the VA decides is Parkinson's disease. Well, they wanted me to prove it. So I had to ask my siblings to write a letter of what I was like in 1966. In 1966, I was in full-blown addiction, and my family suffered greatly. And it was one of the hardest things I had to do. That phone, as you've all heard, weighed 50 pounds.
Yes.
Took me 3 hours before I could pick up the phone and call the oldest of the girls. I'm the oldest in the family. And I told her what I needed. I needed her to write a letter describing my behavior in 1966. And she just, sure, I can do that. I said, really? She said, yeah, Eddie, you and I are okay. We're tight. And I can do that for you. I said, wow. So then I called the next sister. She said, you bet. And that was great. And I called my brother. He said, I'll do that for you. I can do it. Then I called my littlest sister, who, she didn't remember nothing, but, you know, you got to ask them all. She said, yeah. She said, do you remember when you tried to kill Joe? Is that what I'm supposed to put in there? And I said, no. She said, yeah, you tried to kill our oldest sister. And I said, I don't remember at all. She said, yeah, when Mom and Dad came in the house, you had your hands around her neck and had her on the floor, and she was blue. And I went, wow. Now, this is the sister, the first sister I had called, had never mentioned that to me ever in 40 years. I didn't mention any of it when I made my amends to her because I didn't remember. So then Annie says, well, you remember when Mom and Dad found you? We had like 3 old junk run-down garages, and I snuck in the back of them, one of them, and that's where I was living. And remember when they told you could come in out of the garage and live in the basement? And I said, yeah. And they had a lock on the basement door? And I said, yeah. And they told you that was to keep the little kids from falling down the stairs? And I said, yeah. And she said, no, that wasn't why. Mom lied to you. That was because if you were all fucked up and going crazy, we could lock you in the basement before you hurt one of us. I wanted to say, shut your mouth. Didn't remember none of it. Then I got the letters. I knew I had truly been forgiven. My brother called me, though, and he says, I sent the letter off, and the letter's inside of a manila envelope. Your instructions are. My instructions? You get the envelope, you open it up, you take that other envelope and give it to the people that it needs to go to. That envelope is not for your eyes. And my sisters said, I said, why not? I'm a big boy. He said, I do not want you to go through pain again. Total forgiveness. That they would be willing to relive the pain to help me. I don't think I can ever repay this program. Because if it wasn't for the life that you people have given me, that would never ever happen. And I will be eternally grateful. My mother came down for my first birthday. She had never been on an airplane before, and I don't think since she had moved to Montana she had ever been out of the state, and she had never been on vacation. Jim Ann and I were glad that she came down because, of course, the cupboard was bare and she went to the grocery store. We did our own cooking, like it was popsicles and toast and, all the healthy good things that one should eat. And she went to the meeting, of course, and they give you a lighter and a cake, and that's it. And then she asked if she could speak, and they said, yeah. And when she started, she'd never spoken in front of people before. And when she got done, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And I knew that I'd been forgiven. Now here's a woman that I too had slapped around, like the father that I had, that I used to be pissed off for doing. I did the same thing. I slapped her around. The woman who gave me birth. And I was a big enough man to push her around, and still she loved me. She loved me through all of this. One of the biggest signs of love that she ever did was when she said, no more. No more. I am done. Where she thought she was helping me, she was killing me. The enabler. And she told me later on, she said, I'm sorry, I tried to do everything I could do. And I said, Mom, you did the best you could with what you had, and for that I am grateful. But the best thing she ever did for me was when she said no more, when she cut it off. She loved me enough to let me go. And that was the beginning of saving my life. But it's you people that picked up the ball and carried it. Some people like Jim Ann, who I feel real fortunate because I get to go see him this week. He lives in Missouri. So when I get home from here, I jump in my truck, drive to Missouri, and then him and I are speaking at a speaker jam in Moss Point, Mississippi. So if you guys ain't doing nothing, come on down to Mississippi. And I'm really excited to go there. Last year you guys had a speaker here who's one of my heroes, and I had never met him. And that was Motorcycle Ed. And I finally got to meet him. And where do I meet him? Hot Springs, Montana. Awesome. That is totally awesome. And the people who asked Jim and I to come and speak, there are other people that are speaking. There's one or two that have 50-some years clean. That is going to be awesome. It's going to be an awesome time. And that's one of the things that I'm grateful for, is to be able to come and share. And like I said, I could go on and on and on about the most wonderful things that I've received, but it's only been because I've stayed clean. I heard a gentleman yesterday, do not use in between breaths. That's because there was times that I could have very well done it. Very well done it. Do not pick up. If you don't pick up, you're not going to get loaded. It's pretty simple. Well, I guess you could. But, for those of us that used to huff and stuff like that, I mean, that's another thing I like, about my son being around. Half the stuff that's going on today I've never even heard of. So I'll hear something from somebody and I'll pick up the phone. Eddie, what is this? So, yeah, Dad, that's what. But the good thing is I could probably tell you some stories and you'd say, what in the hell is that? But no, that's what's nice about we don't care what or how much you use. And the end was always the same. We've all been to the same place. And it don't matter how we got there, we got there. What matters is what do we do now? Roberta talked about the solution. Bring the solution. And she talked about things that are very important to me last night. And in fact, as soon as a sponsee or somebody says, go back to the first step. You go back to the first step. That's where it all begins, and you got to start over. You got to rework that step. And they'll go, really? Yeah, really. How bad do you want to? And if you do that, then things will start to come together. But you got to clear out the wreckage, the everyday wreckage. If you don't and you hold on to it, you're going to be sick. You're going to stay sick. Now, I still do that. I still stay sick for a while. It's kind of like, I want to stir my pot. Leave me alone. Let me feel like shit for a while. Because I do have people that, kind of ride herd on me and stuff. So, and where, I am so blessed with so many friends. So many friends. Yeah. I do need some help sometimes because of my disease and the progression of it. And, God bless you guys. I go out to eat and of course, the only friends I have are in these rooms. That's the only people I associate with. But, it's hard to ask for help sometimes, and they rip my ass for it, too. They say, we don't care what happens. Well, yeah, if you're in the middle of a food fight, you might care, though. And I get to start it, not unintentionally, but no. I've truly, truly, truly been blessed. And I never thought, due to the relationships that I've had or the marriages that I've had to let go of certain items. And the last thing I had to let go of was everything. But, blessings come out of that. My son said, because when I left, he left too. And when the judge got done, well, my son says, well, she got everything, didn't she? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, she got a hell of a lot more than what she should have. And I said, well, that's what I thought. He said, but you got one thing that she'll never get. And I said, what's that? He says, you gain the respect and the love of your son. I'd do it all again. But she's one of them that had to go back. She's one of them that the dope became more important than anything else in her life. Her and I can talk today, and we're civil. Her and her boyfriend both have new Harleys. My friends say, thanks, Ed. She just bought a nice home on 5 acres. My friends say, thanks, Ed. You know what? It don't matter. I got the love and respect of my son. You know? And as long as I don't think about that, I could give a shit less. You know what? I went out and bought a house. And right now, they are adding on to my garage. And when they're done, my garage is going to be 24 by 53. And it's going to be fucking awesome. You know? Yeah. You guys come down if it starts storming or something. I got a place for you to park your rides. We just move them all in. You know, but it's only been because of you people. Not my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be starting over at 65 years old. I know I don't look a day over 40. But you know what? It's only been because of this program and the trying to do the next right thing. I get to stay at military installations now, right? Which is kind of awesome. Holiday Inn wanted $140 in Great Falls, right, to stay. Malmstrom Air Force Base, 5-star motel, $40 a night. So I get to do that now. And, geez, I don't know where I was going with this. It was something really important. But, yeah, God, it was important. Yeah, well, and when that happens, guess what? It just kind of all goes, you know what I'm saying? And my sponsor used to say there's going to come a time in your life where you need to take the cotton out of your ears and stick it in your mouth. And that's what I should probably do. There's one thing that I want to say in closing. I love you all. Not for who you are, but for who I've become because of you. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our ranking so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. Nawpot is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 or more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to nawpot.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.